back.
Yeah, welcome back to this last session of PV Magazine Roundtables 2023. I have to admit that I'm a bit frustrated from the topic which we are talking and discussing now in this session, but that is basically also why we have to talk and discuss about it. And the frustration maybe you can understand if we go back 1.5 years. There was, I don't know whether we can call it legendary, Solar Power Europe Summit in Brussels. It was just when Corona was over, so it was one of the first big events after Corona. At the same time, it was 1.5 months after Russia invaded the Ukraine, and this resiliency topic popped up very urgently. So everybody it was clear that Europe wanted to become more resilient and more independent in its supply chains. So there were a lot of activities discussed related to rebirth or renaissance of EU solar manufacturing. And since then, the industry and the policy, the industry world and the politicians are discussing about this and discussing support schemes. And we are now in the stage where it's obvious that it's not so easy to set up support schemes. With the schemes, there are a lot of boundary conditions, but I mean, things are moving. So therefore, we have to discuss about it. I'm also sure there will be some European manufacturing, but we will discuss where we are on this road. And the topic even became much huger in recent months. So now there are also discussions going on whether it's necessary to have import barriers in order to set up these manufacturers, how they could look like, what the reasons for those can be. And that will impact then obviously not only the EU manufacturing, but also the downstream side very much, because it impacts also the markets. There are voices in the industry which say that that would really threaten the speed of the energy transition and the deployment of solar. We want to discuss in the second half of this session how and whether this EU manufacturing can be set up without threatening the markets. But before that, we have another panel discussion which will prepare the scene. And Marian, you have prepared something for this.
That's right. Yeah, we were at the, what you said, legendary Solar Power Europe Summit in Brussels when Kadri Simpson, the Energy Commissioner, also said to the industry basically that Europe is planning to match the IRA with its the stimulus, the US stimulus program IIA, with its NZIA, and already back then this was a very ambitious goal. The reason for that is that production in Europe is more expensive, and how much more expensive, it's unclear, we have to see that. But also one thing it is clear is that there need to be some form of help. And yeah, but since then, the announcement 1 year ago, the module prices have dropped drastically, so drastically that many stakeholders speculated about the reasons why that is and how long the prices will stay low. So before we talk about the help that the EU industry can get, we want to set the scene and talk about the prices.
Which, by the way, is interesting for everybody.
It's interesting for everybody, for the developers, as we said. Well, for this, we invited a panel of experts, and we have our, it's comprised by Richard Chen. He serves as an assistant analyst on the solar research team at InfoLink. His in-depth research into customs data, incentive schemes and trade policies will provide us with a crucial understanding of the market movement. And Richard is also an author behind the comprehensive reports on monthly shipment data of modules leaving China. Welcome, Richard. Great to have you here today.
Hello.
And also joining him today is Marius Bakke. He's a senior product manager at Rystad Energy's supply chain research team. And he has reported this year on a module stockpile in European warehouses. And this stockpile has sparked emotional debates within some market participants. And we're happy to welcome you here today. Hello, Marius.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and completing our expert trio is Jenny Chase. She's the head of Bloomberg's NEF Solar Analysis team, and having founded the team in 2006, Jenny is...
Sorry, no, I'm not.
No.
I founded the team. I'm not the head of it anymore.
Oh.
Hi, I'm a solar analyst at BloombergNEF.
Well,
sorry, everyone.
Well, you are a seasoned professional in solar analysis, and your voice is very appreciated by the industry, and we are very happy to welcome you here today.
Lovely to be here.
Okay. Marius, I just said it. You wrote in, I think it was June this year, in a report that there's a 40 gigawatt stockpile in Europe, and that this stockpile of modules in the European warehouses are growing. I think we have to say that the prices of modules, they are driven by demand and supply. So the whole discussion about prices started a bit with this stockpile. We saw the module prices coming down, and at the same time there was this report of a massive stockpile in European warehouses at the harbors in somewhere, and this is when people started to discuss what's happening to the prices. So Marius, maybe first question to you, how big is the stockpile of modules right now?
Yeah, so how big is it? If you kind of look at the gap between imports of modules into Europe and installation numbers, then you do see this disparity in 2022 and also in 2023. Going into the year of 2023, I think the gap was around 46, 47 gigawatts. And the import levels, they haven't really slowed down in 2023 compared to last year. So just looking at the latest data that we have now is the October shipments, and the numbers themselves, the gap would now have grown to around 90. But if you factor in a month of shipment time, then it's probably closer to 85. And that does not take into account any kind of replacing of modules or repowering of projects, although that is probably not going to make a huge dent on the gap itself.
Okay. Jenny Chase, I saw you disagreed with the module gap between import and installation numbers.
Oh, sorry, that was just my it's big face. We think it's 60 to 80 gigawatts, which is probably about a year and a half worth of inventory, and it's actually more than that, because if you're buying modules in Europe for big projects, you don't go to Rotterdam and look at containers. You order a whole batch of the latest version directly from manufacturers. So it's a lot, and yeah, it's a lot, and they're cheap.
But these modules, when we say there's a stockpile, this is modules in Rotterdam, or is it modules also with the big project developers or with the big wholesalers? Who owns the modules at the moment? Is it the manufacturers themselves that keep them at store in the big ports of Europe?
Through the whole value chain. I mean, there's definitely some at the big ports that are owned by the manufacturers who are hoping to sell them. But there is also, I think also distributors and installers also stockpiled quite a lot. Probably less with the big project developers, because they tended to time shipments for when they actually have a project ready to go.
Okay. Richard, you're tracking the export of modules from China. What are you seeing?
Actually, I think it's a really tricky question. It's really hard to define what the inventory is, and even harder to calculate. I mean, after all we have is the export data and installation data, and installation data might be a lag information, and also there's some installation which are not connected to the grid, and then cannot be observed in each country's installation data. But in our calculation, we think that 40 to 45 gigawatts will be an acceptable number for everyone in the industry.
Now you took also the next question of what is acceptable and normal. That's what I really wanted to know, because I mean, we have a number between 40 and 60 gigawatt. We have a massively increased market compared to the last years, and when we hear this number, it is a number. And now I want to know what would be a normal stockpile.
I think it's hard to define what would be a normal stockpile, but I think for European market, especially for European market, it takes more than 1 month to ship a module from China to Europe. So it is always a norm for distributors or developers to keep a certain amount of inventories on their hand. So, but 40, whether it's 40, 45 or 60 gigawatt, it's quite a lot amount of inventory even for European markets, and it is big enough to cause a decrease in the shipment.
And just one more question for you, Richard. How are the module exports from China developing at the moment right now? Are you seeing it's increasing, or is it slowing down?
Actually, we think in our observation, it's already slowing down, but we still see some modules being shipped into European markets because the transformation from PERC into TOPCon. You see, old inventories are mainly PERC modules, but right now, especially in the second half of 2023, those shipments are gradually turning into TOPCon, and we think the shipments going to continue until the end of the year.
How secure are these numbers on the shipments? Because I have read once that you basically count the modules, get the price, because that's what the customs notes down, and then you have to calculate back on the gigawatts. How reliable is it?
We get the data in dollars,
probably.
so yeah, we have to make an estimate based on price.
Marian, who should answer?
Everybody. Let's start with Jenny. Jenny, how do you?
We get the data. We get the data in dollar terms, so yes, we make an estimate based on price. That's not the biggest uncertainty in this estimate.
What is the biggest?
Probably installation. I mean, there's about 58 gigawatts being installed across Europe this year, EU and non-EU, but you can't just take the country statistics from that. The country statistics are really bad, and it could be 5 gigawatts bigger or smaller. And I don't think it's 20 gigawatts bigger or smaller.
Maybe let's ask Marius, what's your methodology? I mean, as far as you're happy to share with us?
Well, I mean, we're not only looking at the Chinese import and export, we're also looking for the European market, the US market, and also the Indian market. And so the metrics that you actually get from these customs data, it can be value in USD terms, it can be the weight, and it can also be given as number of units. So you can have multiple ways of actually calculating and kind of benchmarking the numbers that you get out on a gigawatt basis. And some customs also actually report in watts, such as the US one.
I have one question for this block still? I'm wondering, I want to come back to Marian's question, what a normal stockpile is. I mean, just wondering how long does a module take to travel from when it's noted in the shipment data of the Chinese customs until it will be installed on a European solar plant? Is it 2 months maybe? Something like this? Because then it would be normal to have at least a sixth of the annual production as stockpile count of the deployment.
Was this for me or was it for
Richard? Who wants to answer? Can you answer? Jenny wants to answer.
I mean, I'll say that it takes longer for it to actually get deployed than it takes to end up at a warehouse. And it would also really depend, is it for a utility scale project? Is it supposed to go to a distributor or a wholesaler? That also factors in.
Okay. Jenny, you want to add?
I think before 2020, it would be unusual to hold more than 2 or 3 months of inventory across your supply chain in Europe. Even if you're unless you're a very, very small installer who might buy a container of modules and then deploy them only slowly. I think 2020, the supply chain shocks were so bad and carried on reverberating around the industry and I think people started building up more inventory at that point. So maybe 6 months is more reasonable right now, but that's still a lot given how quick module prices could move. I suspect that will come down again once the industry gets back into equilibrium.
Well, now you're leading to the next topic, because if the module capacity or the stockpile was the supply was going back to equilibrium, it would need to be matched with the production capacity. And we are hearing that a lot of new production capacity is coming online. Jenny, how much are you seeing? How much new capacity?
Oh my goodness! The solar manufacturing industry has structural overcapacity in cells and modules. Okay, everyone wants to make cells and modules, and after 3 years, your old factory is obsolete. So, and you probably owe debt on it. So that's when you start doing unfortunate things like going bankrupt. Solar manufacturing, horrible business. But yeah, I mean, there's enough manufacturing capacity this year for nearly 600 gigawatts. There's enough production of polysilicon this year for nearly 600 gigawatts of modules, and next year it could be a terawatt, no trouble, if there's demand.
A terawatt. And Rystad, are you also seeing a terawatt of capacity coming online? And maybe you can explain us a little bit what's happening in China and how so many new factories can come online. I mean, we're starting this segment discussing if Europe can manage until 2030 to establish some 30 gigawatts. But in China, there's hundreds of gigawatts apparently coming online within very little amount of time.
Actually, our number is a bit higher than Jenny's. As for 2023, the end of 2023, we see over 1,100 gigawatts capacity for module and nearly 1,300 for cell. This is our previous number.
Capacity.
There might be
Mine
some
was
changes.
We didn't hear that, Jenny. Maybe?
Jenny, you didn't hear.
That was capacity. Mine was production.
Yeah, capacity.
Yeah, Richard, go on.
If we're talking about production, it might be less, but I think the point is that the number is large enough to cover the demand and it's large enough to drive a decrease in price.
You said. I mean, Jenny were mentioning that's capacity and not production, and you were speaking about production. That it's you're taking off, you're subtracting essentially idle capacity, and then you end up with production, right?
That was for Jenny, I said.
That was for Jenny. I asked you what you meant by this difference between production and capacity to explain also to our audience what these two different numbers actually mean.
So production, so it's December now. The bottleneck this year was polysilicon production. And so what we did was add up the production from the polysilicon plants because we've got now a pretty good idea about how much they will each produce this year. And there's enough polysilicon for 580 gigawatts of production being made this year. There was a little bit of inventory from last year, so that's essentially available this year. Plus there's about 11 gigawatts of thin film. So nearly 600 gigawatts actually being made this year.
Okay, and when we hear maybe I asked that to Marius then now. When we hear we have 1,100 or 1,300 gigawatts of production capacity, how much of that will actually be produced? Because the global market next year will not be 1,300 gigawatts. So there's an idle capacity that everybody is speaking about. What do you think? How much idle capacity will be there next year?
I mean, our numbers are pretty similar to what Richard said. Nameplate capacity, probably more than 1,100 gigawatts of modules and 1,300 of cells by the end of this year. When it comes to production, our numbers for 2023 is just south of 600, so around 590 gigawatts DC of modules being produced. And of course, that is due to either factories being idle. It can also take a lot of time to actually ramp it up to full production capacity. It's not uncommon to produce more than the yearly demand. And demand is not weak. We have seen tremendous growth in solar PV installations as well. That being said, there's definitely being produced more than can be installed, and also produced more than makes sense, even if you would produce more than the installation numbers. For the you have your big companies and prices are pretty low, and then you have your TU2s, your TU3s, and of course some can't really produce at a low enough cost, so it makes sense to kind of either ramp down utilization rates or temporarily shut down your production facilities. So you will never actually produce to your nameplate capacity.
How much is it in the optimum? If you really have the demand and run a factory, how much you can have? 90% of the nameplate capacity, 80%, something like this?
I would say it also depends across the value chain. So for polysilicon modules, it's a very different story when it comes to utilization rates. You really want to keep your polysilicon factories running as much as possible, whereas it's quite easy to kind of tune your production in modules after the demand, either ramp down or ramp up production capacity. or actual production. Yeah, I think that more or less covers it.
Have the others some estimate what in optimum case the real production can be if you have a nameplate capacity? How much percent?
Well, for polysilicon, it's 100%. And for modules, it's probably about 200% because you'd run multiple shifts if you had demand. That never happens.
Well, we're far away from that, and still we see manufacturers going to add more capacity, and there's also new manufacturers entering the field of solar. Richard, can you explain to us why? What's the atmosphere there? How can they think, let's open another 10 gigawatt factory somewhere?
I mean, last year the demand is strong comparing to the capacity, and the supply chain prices are high. So a lot of investment came in, and tons of expansion plans were announced. And many of them came online this year, which has caused a collapse in the supply chain prices. That's why we see in this year some expansion plans are getting rather postponed or even canceled. And we do expect this situation to happen more in the next few years. Another reason is that the industry is facing a change in technology. New plants are needed, especially when they're switching production from PERC into TOPCon.
Now everybody said that TOPCon is just an evolution of PERC, and it was advertised that it would be easy to just update a production line. Is that not true? It's actually better and cheaper to just start with a new factory, and maybe a new manufacturer will have an easier time to just build a new factory from scratch rather than spending time to update the old factory.
Actually, right now we see most of them are just building a new factory rather than upgrading the production line from PERC into TOPCon. We don't see many cases of the upgrade right now.
And do you think that these old, I would then say old lines will be dismantled at some point, or will they just be there and reactivated when there should be demand again? Jenny is smiling.
They'll never come back. Come on. Those are scrap metal. They just won't bother announcing it for a few years or ever.
And how much of this 1,300 gigawatt nameplate capacity or 1,100 gigawatt nameplate capacity is these old fabs which you might be able to subtract?
Yes, are some numbers. We do expect some production lines to be retired, and so the actual capacity next year might be lower. But right now, it's really hard to tell which production plants and who will be closed down. But we do think that it will start from the wafer size of M6, and then mostly some old lines that were upgraded from M6 to M10. And most of them are focusing on PERC capacities.
Maybe we ask the other way around. How much of the new capacity, or how much production capacity right now is TOPCon or heterojunction?
In our estimation, the TOPCon capacity grew from 80 gigawatt at the end of 2022, reaching about 600 gigawatt at the end of 2023. And it's going to be more in the next year.
So in the best case, we could subtract 400 megawatts.
Maybe.
Marius.
It depends on the market, actually.
Yeah.
Marius, would you subtract 400 megawatts from this nameplate capacity because it's
megawatts or gigawatts?
Sorry, gigawatts, because it's capacity which might not come back.
I mean, I wouldn't just subtract it. I mean, they can still produce, so there's still the possibility of them actually producing. They're not very likely to keep producing over the next couple of years if they do not upgrade into, let's say, TOPCon.
Okay. Well, if they're not able to update TOPCon, well, it's at least a factory. Maybe you can just put in a new production line in an existing factory hall. Jenny, what do you think next year's demand will be?
513 gigawatts. Up from 413 gigawatts this year, which is a 64% rise from 252 last year. So, like the market. The overall market is 65% up. 64% up this year. It's just that supply has grown more, and we're currently expecting a lower increase to 513 in 2024. But that forecasting demand is hard.
But Marius, you're also in the business of forecasting. So why is it hard?
I mean, the big utility scale projects that you can kind of identify the pipeline and see what is coming online. And then you have the distributed solar, which is really, really difficult to actually forecast because it's also so driven by policy. So you can kind of see in California what happened when they did the switch from NEM 2.0 to NEM 3.0. Just drastically reduced the demand for rooftop PV. So it is difficult to actually say how much is going to be installed when it comes to the rooftop side of things. Our number for next year in total is 470 gigawatts, but it's really dependent on well, one thing is, of course, growth in China, but rooftop in general in Europe, in the US, anywhere.
Yeah, that was also the question I wanted to ask Rystad. Everybody I always speak to, they tell me the demand for 2024, 25 will be dependent on the demand in China. So what's your projection for 2024 globally? And maybe you can also tell us a little bit about how China you think is going to develop.
Our estimation for global demand will be around 540 gigawatts. And I think the hardest part is to decide which country will grow so fast to satisfy the strong demand. As for the estimation for China, we expect around 220 to 240 gigawatts next year.
Okay. Jenny, do you want to comment on this today?
Yes, I mean, it is hard. We're always being asked to produce higher forecasts, and I think generally the higher forecasts are right, but it's incredibly difficult to identify which countries are going to have booms, as Rystad has said. I mean, we have China at 240 gigawatts DC this year, and I think it's 260 gigawatts DC next year. But there are some negative feedback mechanisms starting to emerge in the China market. So there's clearly a limit on how rapidly China can grow. China's annual new build can grow from that incredibly high base.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Jenny because the base are already high, and next year China is going to face several challenges such as limited grid capacities and tightened regulation for ground-mounted large-scale projects. So of course, we're expecting a higher demand next year, but we do think the growth is going to be relatively narrow comparing to this year and 2022.
Okay. Well, then we settled the supply side. We gave our estimates on how much module manufacturing capacity or actual production there will be, and now we found out what the demand will be of next year. So there's only one question left. What do you think the prices will be for Tier 1 TOPCon modules in 2024? Starting with you, Marius.
Yeah, I think they're still going to keep falling, and TOPCon is really kind of caught up with PERC prices now. It looks like. So, seeing as they're still going to be supplied by Chinese manufacturers, it makes more sense to kind of forecast this in Chinese yen, and I think somewhere around 0.9 Chinese yen is a point where we might see TOPCon reach next year. And of course, in the US dollar prices, they might fluctuate depending on currency.
Now you have to help me and our audience a bit, because what is the exchange rate of the Chinese?
I mean, currently it's that would be now around 13 US dollar cents per watt peak, but only a few months ago that would have been 12 US dollar cents per watt peak. So it kind of fluctuate with the exchange rate as well.
Okay, Rystad, what do you think?
Our price forecast is at around 12 to 13 cents, but it could be as low as 11 cents. But it's going to be quite challenging for the manufacturers. Actually, those Chinese module makers are signing contracts for next year right now, and we do have some quite competitive market price.
So it's going down and down, starting with 13, now going to 11. And Jenny, are you going below that bar?
12. Our published number is 12 US cents per watt in normal markets. The problem with converting for Chinese is that you always have to think about whether you're including the VAT on exports or not. So I'm going to say 12 US cents per watt in Europe, Brazil, Africa, normal markets.
And that includes VAT now or doesn't?
That's the price that you will buy free on board. I always have to go and calculate what the VAT means because it can mean that they're slightly higher in China.
Okay, now we have a very short time to ask maybe one last question, because when we look at prices, we always look at this price learning curve, starting in 1976 at $100 per watt and going down and down. And it essentially means with each doubling of the installed capacity, you come down to 25% of price reduction. And the curve is somewhat right. It has a few swings, but if you extrapolate and go further, then today you should reach something like 16 cents. But now you're forecasting much lower. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, so I construct the main version of this chart that gets put around, and it is a right headache at the moment. You always have to make decisions on which points you're including in the calculation and what inflation adjustment you're using and things like that. But if you're not very careful, it will tell you that the current price should be 20 cents or so. And clearly the current price is not. Like this week, the price is 12.7 cents. So I kind of had to construct it in a slightly odd way so that the learning rate is currently 35% in our construction. And yeah, we are in a really weird territory right now in terms of prices. We are definitely below the experience curve, and we will probably see some stabilization of module prices until the learning curve catches up. We're currently saying, by the way, that the 2030 price of ordinary standard modules will be 7.4 US cents in 2023 dollars.
That's something to look out for. Do the others agree that the price learning curve, as we so often hear it right now, is not best suited to explain price developments in the solar industry right now? Starting with you, Marius?
I think I can agree with what Jenny is saying there. It's incredibly difficult to actually create these kind of bottom-up cost models for manufacturing of modules now, factoring the learning curves, because kind of no matter what you put in there, you have to adjust the learning curve to actually end up at today's prices. So incredibly difficult.
Right. Maybe Richard, finally, you also want to comment and maybe let us know what you do to forecast to have a model to see price forecasts.
Honestly, it's really hard to make an estimation about the module price. We have different versions of module price forecast every month, and we've seen significant changes in the past few years in this industry, and it's really hard to figure out a certain pattern for the industry and the price to evolve.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Jenny Chase, Richard Chen, and Marius Mordal Bakke for appearing today on our program and sharing with us your knowledge and expertise in solar markets and prices. It was a pleasure to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, now we heard a lot about prices, about markets, about production rates, and we now know what the system is up against, essentially, about what the European help or support schemes have to do and have to counterbalance, essentially. Our next panel of experts will know how to do that, and they will share this with us. Michael, who did we invite?
We invited, and we are very happy that they joined. Alexia Ruvoletto, she is, just now we can see you. She is Senior Policy Advisor at Solar Power Europe. Hello, Alexia. So I cannot hear you. I don't know to our technicians whether I cannot hear you or whether it's everybody cannot hear you. But I go on, they will solve the problem. European Solar, you are from the European Solar Industry Association, which includes, I want to mention it because then we can see the roles on our panel, which includes manufacturers as well as downstream developers, research institutes, and national associations. I want to welcome Jochen Lindahl. He's Secretary General of the ESMC, that's the European Solar Manufacturing Council Association. And as the name says, the association contains the research institutes from Europe and the manufacturers and those who want to manufacture. Hello, Jochen.
Oh, thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for coming. And I want to welcome Jochen Hauff. He is Director of Corporate Strategy, Energy Policy and Sustainability at BayWa RE. For transparency reasons, we also want to say that he's also active in Solar Power Europe, but today you will particularly take the downstream developer role because BayWa RE is one of the very big downstream developers in Europe. Hello, Jochen.
And wholesalers, I can say. So.
Yeah, but we said today we are talking about developers. And I want to welcome Elisabeth Schellmann. Elisabeth is Policy Officer at the European Commission. She has 15 years of experience in clean energy transformation. Currently, she is working on clean tech manufacturing at the European Commission. Before she had a similar role at the Regional Energy and Climate Ministry in Saxony in Germany. Hello, Elisabeth. Oh, also I cannot hear also your voice. I don't know whether it's on our side or whether it's on your side. And I want to throw the first question to you. Therefore, try it again. What do our technicians say to this?
Having a lunch break.
Okay. Now you're there, I think, Elisabeth.
Nee, you're not there.
Okay.
That still doesn't work. I think we have to, our technicians will tell you the next steps, but we'll hopefully get you back on in a second's time.
Okay, now the panel on the panel we want to discuss about the topic, how to give rebirth to the European manufacturing, and also about this discussion which are related to this. So import barriers, and at the end of the session, we will also touch the question of how to ban forced labor from products in Europe. So, but I might like to open this panel with the very simple question, what is at stake? And I want to start with Jochen.
What is at stake? Very good questions. From my perspective, it's really how to say, our whole energy transition in Europe, the high import dependency we have on one single country, China, of course imposes a risk for the energy transition. If something disturbs the trade flows, whatever, if it's like the relations on governmental level, or if it's a natural disaster, whatever it is, it can slow down the energy transition in Europe, which is, of course, of major importance for both the environment, but also in our efforts to get out of the fossil dependency. And this issue has been really on focus after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So it's really about limiting the risk for the European energy transition, I would say.
Jochen, what would you say?
I would agree. It's a pivotal moment as well. If you look at the dimension of time, the dependency is an issue that needs to be addressed. And at the same time, we cannot risk any disruption as long as we have the access and hopefully for a long time to a global market. We need to absolutely use it even at a higher rate. And I think we all look to the COP28 in Dubai and also the scientific reports that show us how dramatic the situation is. So getting this right now is absolutely important, and getting it right means that we need to achieve both things. We need to rebuild a European manufacturing base in PV. We also need to protect it in wind. And at the same time, we need to deploy as much as we can, and we need to accelerate the deployment at an affordable cost so that energy prices, and the promise of PV is to be the cheapest source of electricity. So these prices need to stay in a reasonable and cheap relationship, and then we can assure an affordable energy supply for our European industry.
So it's really about achieving both manufacturing and deployment.
Absolutely.
Alexia, something to add there from your point of view?
Indeed, we also agree. So two equally important goals that are crucial at this point in time. So reshoring solar manufacturing and speeding up deployment.
So then
and
we
if
can.
we don't get it right, I mean, we can either go for a lose-lose strategy or a win-win one. And I mean, I'll tell you later about the strategy we were proposing.
But now Elizabeth is back from the policy officer at the European Commission, and we are now starting off with the first part of it. That means what support schemes can there be for which would support European manufacturing? And there's an abbreviation which I think people in the field now know. That's the NZIA. That's the Net Zero Industry Act, which is just about to be passed in Brussels. I think maybe we hear it from you. It's expected, I think, soon at least. What is the status with this NZIA and maybe also other support schemes?
Okay, yeah, thanks. I hope everyone can hear me. And just to take a step back, I think it's definitely really important to have both the rapid deployment of renewables and the manufacturing capacity in Europe. And this is also what the Commission is pushing. So, for example, the revised Renewable Energy Directive, we set new and more ambitious targets. And at the same time, we need to get a stronger PV industry in Europe to stay more resilient. And one key tool the Commission proposed to support this development is the Net Zero Industry Act you just mentioned. We suggested a proposal in March of this year, which has exactly the objective to secure supply of technologies we need for the energy transition. And it focuses not only on solar, other net zero technologies like wind, heat pumps, and several more. And there are several key actions foreseen, like facilitation of permitting, investment incentives. And one key area that's also lively discussed is market access. This means sustainability and resilience criteria in public auctions, in public procurement, and other support measures. And there, as I mentioned, different views both within the institutions. So as we're still negotiating these proposals, of course, also the Parliament and the Council have their views and input. And but it's not only within the European institutions, also within the solar sector, there are different views how to take this forward. And regarding the process, it's really crunch time. So the Parliament adopted already its report, its view on this. And the Council, representing the Member States, will do so tomorrow. And after that, the discussions and negotiations between the three of us are taking place in the next weeks. And we really need to come to an agreement in early February, because otherwise it will be too late to agree on this and to adopt it in before the European elections taking place next year. So this is really one of our key objectives for the next weeks. And even after agreement, there's still a lot of work and potential to shape the situations, because it's there will be guidelines for each of the industries. And of course, there exist also other tools we might discuss later. Thank you.
Thank you. As far as I understand, it is about. It contains a lot of different aspects, but one aspect is this requirement that there's. I don't know whether it's formulated right, but there's local content in auctions, in public auctions for solar. Alexia, I'm quite sure you also know what is going on in Brussels there. Is that something, how it's discussed at the moment? Is that something you appreciate? And
yeah, so indeed, for us, what is important for the Net Zero Industry Act is that you need to have, on the one side, a finance push. So you need to have state aid rules that are not complicated and that cover OPEX. And you need EU-level funding. This is what we are missing. And then you also need a demand pool. And for that, we have developed this concept, which is essentially a soft market segmentation for auctions where you have a resilience segment for where local content is, EU content is a non-price criteria. And then another open segment, which is instead left as open to any manufacturer. And for us, this is extremely important that we get this right. And we hope that, we see that the Council might adopt the market segmentation approach with 20% of auction volumes which have a non-price criteria. And we also see the Parliament asking for a technology-specific approach. If we have these two together in the final version of the Net Zero Industry Act, that would be an extremely appealing legal framework.
So the soft market segmentation is not part of the NZIA yet?
No, but we see this being discussed at the council level.
Okay. And what would be the remuneration be for the soft market segmentation? If I'm a European manufacturer, then my OPEX are a little bit higher. What do you suggest? How much more these companies will receive?
So that's why we are talking about finance push, because the finance would come in to bridge the gap between the most competitive price that European manufacturers can offer and the highest willingness to pay from EU off-takers.
Jochen, do you think that this, what is at the moment, at the current status, will really then help to the companies to set up European production across the value chain, not only modules, also cells, and maybe even wafers and ingots?
It will help on the module side, I would say, but it's not a silver bullet. We're talking here about public auctions and procurements, and it's not a huge share of the overall European market. And it's also about what in the end, which percentage levels, etc., that are finally agreed in the trialogues. How big can the price difference be between European used hardware and others, and what qualification criteria, etc. And that's as we heard in the previous session, that collapse in supply chain prices for European manufacturers to match that, there need to be a certain possibility to get higher payments for European-made products. So it depends a little bit on which levels of price difference and non-price criteria levels that it in the end will come. But it will help, of course, less in the upper part of the value chain, I think, because there need to be some ways to include it also, the higher manufacturing cost of in wafer or polysilicon, etc. And so far, we do not really see it being addressed in the Net Zero Industry Act.
Okay, but now let's see. I mean, let's be a bit realistic. Let's think that it will be maybe more or less what is discussed at the moment. What do you think then about European production? Is there still a chance to set it up? What else can happen, Jochen?
Did you address the question?
Yeah,
Sorry,
to you, because you had your doubts that the NZIE has a big effect on this.
Yeah, it will not be enough because it will take 2 to 3 years before this really have an effect on the market and for European production. And currently, we are facing a situation where I would say almost all European PV manufacturing, all part of the value chains, are really suffering due to the collapse in supply chain prices. We've seen some early signs of it with bankruptcy of Norwegian Crystals and lately REC closing down silicon production. But when we talk to our members, it's a lot of them has reduced their production to very low levels, and many are really looking into if they need to close down permanently in the beginning of next year, so to say. So the Net Zero Energy Act will not help European manufacturers in the current situation and for the next year or so. So we have been asking for some immediate actions to really help reduce the pressures. We have suggested buyout of modules, potentially to give to Ukraine, etc. But all those actions that could really help the industry at the moment seems currently unlikely, at least on a European level, and the member state has not shown that high interest either.
Before we come more on these points, maybe I would like to know from Jochen, as now your role as developer again. We have heard that the question is how much the off-takers would pay more. I mean, that is something you can know as the as your developing process for those who have to sell the electricity later. So are you a bit afraid in this discussion that it could also destroy the market a bit, or at least be a burden for the market, because then there's a bar that then off-takers have to pay more, be it can be also the state as off-taker. For example, if you have state auctions, then they will become more expensive. And particularly, I mean, I don't know, I have copied here this Article 20 of the NZIA, which says that 50% of the net zero technology part of the tender should not origin from countries, a group of countries, GPA, and China as part of this country. So would that slow down energy transition?
If this is applied to the full market, the whole market, and not like Alexia suggested to a certain resilience segment, and I think, yes, that a 50% bar is a high bar to reach. And if that needs to, and then again, the devil is in the details, and the question on how is that implemented. If that is really then meant to be on a project by project, and every single project would have to show a 50% share, then absolutely this will impact development strongly, and it will slow down deployment significantly, if not stop it for a few years, because, and that's why I struggle with you wanting me to take the developer role here. All the European manufacturers that are currently producing and are currently there are producing products that are suitable for the residential and smaller scale market. Yeah, and we are using different modules, bigger sizes, different builds for the large project. So, and the European manufacturers, obviously, they have an absolute point to focus on the residential market first in their build-up, because that's where a willingness to pay for the made in Europe quality is more likely to be, and is already existing. We can confirm it exists among our customers to whom we sell European modules already today. But on the power plant side of things, of the developer market, where investors, financial investors, look at IRRs, it's a lot harder to get any willingness to pay any additional pricing for a made in Europe quality. And that's why also in our view, a segment that is auctions in which the state, the governments, the member states, but also on the European level, set a certain quantitative targets of 5, 10, 20, up to 30 gigawatts, maybe even beyond that, in the coming years of a European quality being auctioned. That is a way where developers can operate, and they can bid into these market segments, and that's why we very much support that idea. It was also, apart from the NCIA, it's also part of the proposals of BSW, the German Solar Association, and Jochen. That's where we hope, and that's why we're focusing on it, because I fully agree with you. It doesn't help today's manufacturers if there is something that will take hold in 3 years. But yeah, the German legislative process has the advantage that it might be still decided this year or beginning of next year. So there is a bit of a hope a bit earlier. And that sends an important signal to investors and banks who are currently asking us whether they should invest in these manufacturers.
But Jochen, if you see the Article 20, what I'm wondering when I read this is how much trust the investors really become to invest into module manufacturers. This is a lot what we talk about right now: module manufacturing, cell capacity, ingots, etc. It says 50% of the net zero technology part of the tender measured in financial value. If we hear from the panel before that modules are now down to 12 cents. Or will be next year, and in the next in 2025 or 2026, this is when we talk about it will be even cheaper. Then 50% of the financial value of the equipment can be made up with inverters, transformers, and BOS components, and the modules you can still get supplied from somewhere else.
Okay, yeah, and then it's even worse. It didn't even help the target audience, let's say, yeah, but it would. I mean, obviously, many of the inverters in the project space are also currently imported from other countries. It's not that the European manufacturers have their core inverter manufacturers have their core business in large-scale parks, right? So yes, there are ways to then handle this, but the point is, and that's what Alexia said at the beginning as well, we need a win-win. We need to get it right. We need to have rules in place that actually help. So incentivizing a real made-in-Europe quality, including clear ideas of module, cell, wafer, polysilicon share, inverter share, and so on, and define that European quality, and then have targeted auctions for this, then that we can do that. We can pull these projects together. Yeah, we can partner with European manufacturers also for several years if we know that this regulatory framework is there. We have done it with Meyer Burger in the US.
Okay, sorry, Jochen. We can come to. I think we can come to this later because I have to look a bit on the time, and I would like to come back at the end whether there is a positive way, a way to create this win-win situation. But before we come to this, I would like to move to another aspect, which really, at the moment for me, it's more the rumor stage, because a lot of people were discussing: is there somebody asking for tariffs? So import barriers and tariffs. I mean, it would be sort of natural. The prices are low. They are now. We just heard it at 12 cents per watt. Expected around. I mean, of course, fluctuating a bit. And for next year, so. And I also heard that there would have been started preliminary investigations for a process which can lead to import tariffs. Alexia, what do you hear from Solar Power Europe concerning this? And
so we know that the Commission hasn't ruled out the use of trade defense instruments in the solar sector. And there was a ministerial meeting last Friday where we heard from a number of other ministers like Germany, Spain, Italy, the Netherlands, that they expressed concerns over these measures, and reiterated the importance of free trade and not slowing down the energy transition. So our position, I think we made it very clear. We have issued a letter together with over 400 organizations, including manufacturers, that are against these kind of measures. And the point is, trade defense cannot replace industrial strategy. So as I mentioned before, we need a proper industrial strategy for European manufacturers that is about our energy security and resilience of supply chains for Europe. And we cannot, we have to stay united and tell politicians that we need the right tools to support European manufacturers, and those tools are not trade defense measures.
Jochen, you smiled a bit. Have you signed this declaration? Why not?
No. When I was looking at that declaration, I was missing, I would say, almost all European PV module manufacturers. But to make our stance clear, and we have had that on under the whole autumn, we are not advocating for any tariffs. We have been favoring and asking for sort of the same things, direct support schemes on CAPEX and OPEX. And in addition to that, local content requirements in different EU-wide legislations like the Net Zero Industry Act or national legislations like the German proposal that's on the table. So we are not in favor of import tariffs, but we also understand that the Commission is quite open to this approach. It was sort of hinted between the lines in the State of the Union speech by President of European Commission Ursula von der Leyen, and also last Friday there was a ministerial meeting where Commissioner Breton, I would say, really opened the door wide open for that. So I understand why there's rumors, because the Commission seems to be open, but currently no one has really.
But you wouldn't be unhappy, as I understand.
Would be unhappy on.
If they come, you wouldn't be unhappy from, let's say, I mean, it's obvious it would be serve interests of manufacturers at the end.
Yeah, but first of all, as usually in associations, there are division among members on the will, but we are not in favor of a tariff. But speaking on other trade measures, how to say, there are two certain market entry regulations that we really want to see being implemented in Europe, and that's for a ban on forced labor regulation. Okay. That's a market entry barrier. So if your product has been manufactured with forced labor,
in a second.
And another one could be the eco-design legislation, where you put demand on quality, recyclability, environmental footprint, etc. Okay. That's also a market entry barrier or legislation that we for sure are looking forward to see in Europe.
But maybe we want to hear from Elizabeth what she's hearing in the lunch canteen or somewhere of the EU Commission about tariffs.
Well, yeah. Even if there were news, it's not my role to announce this here. And it's really it's not the Commission initiating this, and so we are listening what industry is saying, but it's a different DG, and for this reason I can't go into detail on this.
But I think industry is split, isn't it, Jochen?
Jochen or Jochen?
Jochen.
Industry is split in a way, but and then again not, because Jochen also said that ESMC is also against tariffs, and I think that's good. And there's also an obvious reason that many of the manufacturers import wafers or cells from China in order to produce and to manufacture in Europe. So a tariff where you don't exactly know where it's going, where exactly it starts and stops, and how high it is, can also have implications and negative implications for some, if not all, of the manufacturers themselves. So I think we have some common ground here, but at the same time, if we, as has happened in recent weeks and months, if people allege that this is a case of dumping and these strong price decreases are a case of dumping, then it's clear that the echo must be from DG Trade to think about tariffs. So you can ask for tariffs also in other ways. You don't have to directly ask for it. But I think, hopefully this gets solved and we are not losing the time, and it would be a terrible time of an investigation that can last for several months, which will cast uncertainty on pretty much everyone. It wouldn't immediately give the manufacturers and their investors a clear signal, because the investigation can go either way. And also for us and the developers now, for months we wouldn't know if it comes and how high it comes, and exactly does it start at cells, does it start at modules, and so on. So it would immediately send that it would increase the uncertainty in the market, and that would be the immediate effect. And that's why other immediate measures, such as buying up the warehouses, doing things like that really, really help in January. It would have been better still this year. And I share Johann's sense of urgency there. That is just a safer place to go. And at the same time, unfortunately, politically, we jointly haven't managed really to find a path to get that.
Yeah, Jochen, we have to move forward to the next aspect. Maybe we can have it in the final round a bit. But I want to summarize. I mean, the point is the tariffs wouldn't just wouldn't just slow down the deployment when they are there, but just the insecurity and all what is related to that. And you have lived that before because you have lived this first introduction of tariffs in 2013, which we have no time now to recapitulate. But Alexia, Jochen already mentioned it. This question is how to ban forced labor. I mean, it's only a bit related to European manufacturing because basically it should not be banned to establish European manufacturing, but it should be banned because nobody wants to have modules which are produced with forced labor. So Solar Power Europe is preparing an initiative. I think it will be also discussed tomorrow on your event, which you have in Brussels. But please give us a short, we ask you for 2 to 3 minutes introduction to what the Solar Stewardship Initiative is.
Yes, thank you so much for this question. Of course, that is my main role in Solar Power Europe, so to work on this initiative to help companies essentially comply with the forced labor ban and the due diligence directive even before they come into force. So the idea is that we have launched together with Solar Energy UK this supply chain assurance scheme, which is based on third-party verification, so independent auditors auditing sites, and a multi-stakeholder governance, meaning that it is not just an industry initiative. We're making everyone accountable with a variety of stakeholders that can directly impact the governance, the future, the decisions of the Solar Stewardship Initiative. So we're in the process of setting this up. It is a work in progress, but we have already published an ESG standard, and we will start having assessments from next year. So now we have opened the membership for 2024. We have quite a lot of interest from manufacturers to sign up and to commit to give at least 2 sites for 2024, with a view of increasing progressively the number of sites that go through certification. And the standard itself has been developed through a public consultation. So we have asked stakeholders, different stakeholders, so from policy experts, NGOs, civil society, to help us develop this standard. And this will be complemented by a supply chain traceability standard in 2024. We will follow the same process. So again, we'll propose a draft and then we'll open to public consultation, and we'll also run a pilot to ensure that the standard is feasible and implementable in the short term.
Thank you very, very much, Alexia. Before we let you all comment to this and how you see that, because time is a bit running out, I first want to give another bit of input to all of us, because we have asked Christian Rosland from the Clean Energy Associates, CEA, he is Senior Policy Analyst, to report us a bit about what is going on in the United States, because they have the so-called, I also have to read it, Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, or everybody speaks about UFLPA, and he will report a bit of his experience. Christian, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Good. Thank you very much for coming. Great to see you. Christian, what is the situation concerning the ban on forced labor in the United States, and how would you characterize UFLPA enforcement today?
Well, it's been a very interesting year and a half since UFLPA was implemented in the United States. You know, I think no one wants to buy product with forced labor in the United States. But it's important not only to look at the policy goals, but also what form these policies take and how effective they are in meeting their ends and what the side effects are. So, and it's notable that UFLPA is being promoted by human rights activists in the US Department of Labor as a model for the EU forced labor ban. It's very hard to know what has gone on with UFLPA to date, and I think that that's in part due to how the law was written. It told customs to prevent forced labor products with any inputs from Xinjiang from entering the United States, but it didn't provide any guidance on how to do it. And customs is a law enforcement agency. So to date, Customs has only provided aggregate information on the volumes of shipments detained and released. It doesn't provide any information about which companies have been stopped. And also the process of implementing UFLPA doesn't feature any explanation to the public or to the parties detained as to why Customs makes the decisions that it does as far as who to detain and who not to detain. Neither in terms of the entity list, which is the list of companies whose products are banned, essentially, does it provide any explanation as to how companies are added to that list. This is all given to the discretion of that Forced Labor Enforcement Task Force, which is a multi-agency task force. So, I think that's really different than how the EU forced labor ban has been designed to date. So there's not a lot of media discussion to date, and I would characterize enforcement as being not very transparent. We have had to learn who has been detained through our clients, through other suppliers. We've had to sort of piece together the picture of who is being detained and to try to figure out why. We know that a lot of this tends to look very similar to who has been named by human rights groups in their reports. And one of the interesting things about that is that many of the companies who the human rights groups focus on, they're the largest solar companies. They're the largest Chinese manufacturers. But these are also the companies that often have the cleanest supply chains, often getting non-China polysilicon, making ingots and wafers in Southeast Asia, and sort of the least risk of exposure, at least for the product much of the product they're sending to the United States, of connection to Xinjiang. Whereas there are other suppliers that are much riskier who, to our knowledge, have not been stopped to date. So it's a bit chaotic.
Thank you very much. That was a great explanation. Maybe a final short statement. How has it reduced the share of silicon from Xinjiang? I mean, Xinjiang is synonym then in this case for alleged forced labor.
Sure. I think that, it concurrent with the implementation of UFLPA, there has been a shift away from Xinjiang in terms of polysilicon production in China. Now, there's still more polysilicon being produced in Xinjiang. It's just that the polysilicon production is growing very rapidly. And so there are even more factories being made in places like Inner Mongolia to produce polysilicon. It's hard to say that that's exactly because of UFLPA, but that definitely has happened concurrently. But in terms of the product that's coming to the United States, it's very difficult to tell because, we basically just shifted away from these large Chinese producers to other producers who in many cases have even more opaque supply chains and who are at very high risk of having Xinjiang content.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm not sure that it's been effective.
Thank you very, very much for this input to our panel, Christian.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much. Well, I will play the question, or I know that our panel has been listening to Christian and how the US has been implementing forced labor protection laws, and there was a verdict there, and I want to ask Jochen his opinion on that. Would you see this type of law with that type of burden of proof applied in that direction? Would you approve of that for Europe?
Yes, that's our current stance. I think first you need to take a step back and really look what we are talking about here. We're talking about forced labor that is being imposed by the Chinese state and used to really suppress the Uruguay minority, to rip their cultural identity, and there are also several evidence that there are plans to really sort of get them out of the way, basically. And there are the United Nations, human rights organizations, etc., have condemned the situation, and actually several national European parliaments, such as France, the US, the Netherlands, and the UK, that have labeled this treatment as a genocide. So that's the major thing. And what I want to say is that then you have to look at it differently from where we're talking forced labor in general globally. It's usually imposed by companies or individuals that trade their workers badly, but here we talk about a state-imposed forced labor. And what I understand is that the Xinjiang region is really one of the one regions in the world that has the highest surveillance. It's a police state, and there's no possibility for outside organization, maybe European or any organization, to make really transparent third-party evaluation of what's going on in there. So that's why. Yeah, so
we
that's
have to
why
look
we have a position
on the time a bit. It's a
Yeah.
bit because it's such a huge field. But maybe one statement: would you support the Solar Stewardship Initiative?
I'll comment to it. Yeah. So we are in favor of the Parliament version of the forced labor regulation, where the proof of burden should be on companies or organization active in regions that are red flagged by the European.
How is the Solar Stewardship Initiative in this sense, Alexia? In the sense of proof of burden, what Jochen just mentioned, should be the proof of burden with the companies who are active in Xinjiang also, that they are not using forced labor. What is the Solar Stewardship Initiative planning for this?
So the Solar Stewardship Initiative doesn't take a position on this. It's not a political organization. So it's a tool to help companies comply with the forced labor regulation, however it looks like.
And so how would they prove? How would they prove then?
About the position of Solar Power Europe, that is a different thing. So I can tell you the position of Solar Power Europe as well. So
okay. Honestly, we have to really speed up. I'm sorry, sorry for this, but maybe
the reversal of for Solar Power Europe. This is not the Solar Stewardship Initiative, but the Solar Power Europe. The reversal of the burden of proof is a technical topic that has to be managed responsibly, and this is because there is a technical problem with tracing materials and understanding exactly where everything comes from. So that said, regardless of where legislators land on this topic of burden of proof, it is crucial that there is clear implementation. So there is no point setting a rule if there's no clear path to compliance. Otherwise, we risk that that rule remains that letter, because then we have panic, we have confusion, we have circumvention.
A bit so like in the US.
We want to avoid that. And that's why we're also advocating for initiatives like the Solar Stewardship Initiative to be recognized in legislation, because that's a clear path for compliance.
And would that then allow a way to ban the forced labor without disrupting the industry? Because I mean, for sure, we know that most of the modules come from China, and it's really a way you can disrupt the industry with, in a way that we would slow down deployment a lot. And is the Solar Stewardship a way to cope with this task?
Well, I mean, of course, if there is a ban without, which leaves companies a bit puzzled about how to comply with that command, then of course you risk having a slowdown in deployment. But that is, I mean, what's important here is to tackle forced labor. So we need to work to tackle forced labor. And the ban is absolutely crucial, because otherwise initiatives like the Solar Stewardship Initiative will have less market uptake. So it's absolutely crucial that the policymakers lay down the command. But then the industry needs to act, and the stakeholders need to act. And that's why we're building this platform, so that we can all act together and foster a movement for human rights, respect, sustainability, compliance, transparency. So this is the goal.
We have to come to the end. Unfortunately, I think we could go on forever. But final statements of each, starting with Elizabeth, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Maybe you can also give us a final statement about the NZIA, obviously, but also how these two things, the Uyghur forced labor protection from Europe that's being discussed, is discussed in conjunction with the projection of establishing a manufacturing in Europe.
Well, I think these initiatives are all kind of complementary. Although we have to say that the regulation the Commission proposed prohibit products made by forced labor is not like focused on a specific sector or clean tech. It's a kind of general regulation, and as you know, it's still negotiated with the Parliament and the Commission. And I think it's also like to look at the whole bundle of measures that the Commission proposed. So, for example, we also have the TCTF, the Temporary Crisis and Transition Framework, which gives some like options for financial support, as well as the Innovation Fund. And there's also plans to propose eco-design and energy labeling rules for PV. We are working on international partnerships and trade agreements. So even beyond the Net Zero Industry Act, there are a lot of activities going in the direction to support the PV manufacturing in Europe, but like as part of the clean tech industry in general. And yeah, I think the focus on the next weeks will really be on the Net Zero Industry Act, and it's really valuable to have the input from all the stakeholders, not only towards the Commission, but as you already do, towards the Parliament and the member states, because we need the agreement of all these stakeholders. And we really hope that this can be one step into the right direction to strengthen the European EV manufacturing.
Just one very short sentence. When is the next update for the NZIA in the next weeks? What should we look out for in the industry?
Well, there is tomorrow. The Council will adopt its general approach. So the position of the member states on the current drafts from the Commission, and also what the Parliament suggested. So I think that's a key milestone. And then next week, dialogue discussion will start with the three stakeholders, and there are two more trialogues, one in January and one in early February. And I think these are the key milestones.
February, we're looking out for. Thank you.
Now, last statements. I mean, we have heard a win-win situation. I must say, win-win-win situation. European production, strong deployment of solar, and no forced labor. Last statements, Jochen, and Alexia. 2 sentences.
So from my 2 sentences, 2 sentences. Currently, there's a structural disadvantage to be a European manufacturer. We talk about the amount of support that you can is different, and also the labor and environmental regulations is different. And we need a certain set of policies and regulations to level out the playing field. And we have talked about them here today. It's eco-design, it's forced labor regulation, it's Net Zero Industry Act, and it's also direct support in terms of OPEX and CAPEX through the lifted stated rules.
Jochen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree on what Jochen mentioned, and I think that signal needs to be clear to politicians and people in the Commission here. Tinkering on all little different instruments, a little bit here, a little bit there, some on national, some on European level, is not going to help that win-win-win. We need a real concerted effort and a clear political will. Sometimes I call it a European Airbus, even though that might also be provoking, fright and fear, right? Because it's a complicated construct. But it's clear this is a big European project and a big European effort that is needed here. And it cannot just be led to let's see, and then all the manufacturers are bankrupt and then we don't have to do it anymore. That's the danger currently. So, we from the industry stand ready to take up European production if the conditions are right and if we can do it in a reasonable and responsible manner.
Alexia, final word.
Indeed. So European manufacturers deserve an industry strategy that is worth of this name. And please, let's keep the discussion on human rights violations separate from that. We need European industry to be supported properly. And we also need to enforce our EU values on trade, but that is a separate discussion.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much to all the panelists. Elisabeth Schellmann, Policy Officer at the European Commission. Alexia Ruffoletto from Solar Power Europe. Jochen Hauff from BayWa RE. And Jochen Lindahl from European Solar Manufacturing Council. Thank you very much for joining.
Yeah, we've come to an end. What a discussion, right?
Yeah.
What an interesting day we had today.
I'm still a bit tired. I think we could have gone on for another 2 hours.
I think so too.
And that means also that I think we will continue, of course, this discussion. And not now, but
in the future, there will be new roundtables, of course. Yeah, if there are more discussions you want to see, you can visit, obviously, also our website and see webinars and events in all different languages. German webinars with Michael and me occasionally. English-speaking webinars, there are plenty, and I've seen that we also have sometimes French, Italian, and Portuguese webinars. So look out for that to see more.
Yeah. But we want to thank all our partners for their contributions to today's program. And yes, there the partners are. It wouldn't have been possible to have this 2 days PV Magazine Roundtables program without our lead partner, Nextracker, and also other partners.
Yeah, like Astrology and Lithium, a platinum partner.
Yeah, and Jinko and Solar and Longi are also platinum partners.
And we had Solar Edge and Trina Solar also sponsoring us as a platinum partner.
Yeah, and of course all our gold partners. We thank you for your support and your contribution to this event.
Tongwei Solar also supported us as a platinum. Yeah.
Final words, what we have learned?
What we have learned. Michael, what have you learned? What did you take
I
with
mean,
you from these long 2 days?
I just referred to the last session which we had. I mean, supply chain issues are very complex, and they are not only a discussion for potential manufacturers, but it really concerns the whole industry because it can also lead to threaten the deployment. And at the end, we need a win-win-win situation. Manufacturing, deployment, and no forced labor at the end. Yeah. So, but I mean, sure, people are working on it. And what have you learned?
I thought it was really interesting, the discussion on the quality of TopCon that I had yesterday, because there were these reports and everybody was very excited about the quality of TopCon, or very nervous about it. And I was really happy to finally get some clarity, also some clarity and knowledge for myself that it is vastly or broadly an encapsulant issue and it can be contained. I think that was a very interesting part of the discussion that I could figure out.
So, yes, and we have also, in the meantime, while you are waiting for the next roundtables, there's our new PV Magazine, which issue is this? December issue? Yeah, sure, we are already in December. And we announce our PV Magazine Awards there, and you can read it from, I think you can buy it from this week on.
Yes, on our website.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining.